So Brad, talk to me, what types of technologies and companies are you looking to invest in with this new $1 billion?
Well, Microsoft's commitment today to put $1 billion into climate innovation is a piece of a broader plan, but the fund itself will really be focused on accelerating innovation and climate reduction and removal technology where money is not flowing already. So one area that we just see of being paramount importance is the creation of new and better technology that will enable us all to remove carbon from the atmosphere. Another area where we see a critical need for money where it's not yet flowing is, for example, project finance for renewable energy sites in, say, developing markets. There are some parts of the world, perhaps especially in the United States and in Western Europe, where capital is already flowing for new renewable energy, but not everywhere. And we want our money to make a difference.
So are you really looking outside the U.S. to deploy this $1 billion?
Certainly, in part, we're looking outside the United States. I would say, especially when it comes to the creation of new places that will generate renewable energy. But when it comes to technology innovation, it doesn't know boundaries. It doesn't know specific countries. I'm sure there will be some of this flowing inside the United States, across Europe, and perhaps around the world.
You know, as you take a look at some of Microsoft goals, I know that you have a plan by at least 2030 to be net carbon negative. Where are we on achieving that goal?
Well, I think in many ways, the most ambitious thing we're saying today is, as you just mentioned, we will be carbon negative as a company by 2030, not just for our company, but for our supply chain, for our so-called value chain. And by 2050, we will remove from the environment all of the carbon that Microsoft has emitted, either directly or for electrical consumption, since we were founded in the year 1975. That is a big goal. We have a detailed plan, but we have a lot of work to do. That's why we said this is a decade-long ambition for us. If you just step back and you look at the world as a whole, humanity emits more than 50 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases every year. We think that as a planet, we're going to have to get that to net zero by, say, 2050, meaning that by the middle of this century, humanity must be removing as much carbon from the atmosphere as we're putting out every year. We're trying to get there 20 years earlier because we can move farther, we can afford to move faster, and we should. But in many respects, I don't think it's an understatement at all to say that this is the biggest technological goal, the biggest economic objective in the history of humanity. It will require all of us to do more.
Well, and Brad, and part of that is you mentioned this a little bit. You're working with a lot of your suppliers and your customers to make sure that they are doing their own initiatives in terms of being net carbon neutral as well. How are you folding in these goals with perhaps some of the contracts that you're making with suppliers and customers to make sure they're being held accountable as well?
It really does require a very detailed plan, which we've been putting together over the past months. One aspect when it comes to supply is naturally the supply of electricity for ourselves. And what we are saying today is that by the year 2025, we will have power purchase agreements in place for 100% renewable energy for all of our data centers, all of our buildings, and all of our campuses worldwide. But then there's all of the other emissions that are generated, for example, as part of our supply chain. And as you said, we will be implementing by next year new tools and processes for our suppliers. We'll want to see consistent measurement of their emissions. We want to help our suppliers with new tools so they can reduce their emissions. We will be talking with our suppliers in the coming months. I think you can expect to see us move forward with new economic incentives so that as we're buying goods and services, we're focused on encouraging our suppliers to reduce their emissions. And if they do, I think they're going to find it easier to sell their products to Microsoft.
One of the other tools that you're providing is the Azure Sustainability Calculator that really lets customers look at the savings and the carbon footprint that would be reduced by shifting from in-house servers to perhaps shifting to the cloud. But that clearly would be benefiting your cloud business. Does that not feel a little bit self-serving?
Well, the best approach in the world, we believe, for almost any problem is to find ways that you can do good and do well at the same time. That sort of puts capitalism and business to work. It puts the market to work. Just think about how we've empowered consumers around the world. You go to the grocery store, and before you buy something, you can see how many calories it will cause you to consume. Imagine a future where we can pick up a product and we'll know how much carbon was emitted to create it. For our customers, we want to create digital tools that will help them reduce their carbon emissions. We want to make the case to them that we will help them use our technology in ways that emit less carbon. We actually think it's good in the tech sector if we all compete with each other, including on reducing carbon. There will be days when we do more than a competitor. There will be days when our competitors take new steps, and it's competition. But if there's competition where we should applaud each other, it's got to be this. This is the kind of competition that will make each other better, but ultimately serve the world and address a problem of huge urgency and importance.